Hey guys, Bugcat7 here. Okay, it is Monday, June 15th, 2020, and I want to thank you for visiting the Stonewall Research channel here on YouTube. I really do appreciate it. All right, guys. Well, in this video, I want to take a look at the myths and folklore, the stories of the quote unquote giants, and also Bigfoot in Native American folklore. And the reason why I'm including Bigfoot in there is because often the stories about Bigfoot in the native people's folklore are apparently doing much of the same things that they describe as the giants. But it's funny, also included in there is the stories of the little people being cannibals as well, which again, as you know, if you've been a long time subscriber to my channel, that I do not subscribe to the notion that the giants were cannibals. Okay, for several different reasons. Although that later hybrids of the giants at later times may have been, I don't know, or certainly were meat eaters, but it's worthy to note that mainstream archaeologists, mainstream academics, on upon excavating something like 76 different Paleolithic sites across the United States, out of those 76 sites, only 14 sites showed evidence of predation of large mammals. And they couldn't really figure out what the rest of these people might have been doing because there wasn't any evidence of them eating any sort of animal material found in these sites. So, as we know also from my reviewing of Charles C. Mann's book, that the Native American peoples, the native peoples, the first peoples of Americas here, were growing anthropogenic forests, and a lot of their diet was nuts from nut bearing trees. And that they managed these nut bearing trees, and of course, it could be a source of protein in their diets, but often these large skeletal remains that were unearthed, the teeth in the skulls of these giants often were perfectly preserved. And this was something that was dumbfounding the people who were digging these things up, because even people of those times did not have perfect teeth. And it's very unusual for somebody to go through life without having problems with their teeth. So they determined that a lot of these giant skulls with the perfect teeth peoples must have had a much cleaner diet, that they must have been primarily vegetarians, which certainly seems to be the case. That doesn't mean that they weren't eating fish and whatever bounty from the water, from the sea, etc. They may have been including in their diets, but they certainly seemed, by just the evaluation of their teeth, that they had much cleaner diets, and therefore they were primarily vegetarian. And you know from the videos on my channel, like this one here, the giants were vegetarians, not cannibals. The whole giant, Jack the Giant Killer, etc. All this stuff that I go through on my channel about the anti-giant propaganda, as represented in the Bible, but also through the native peoples here in the Americas to demonize these people. But it wasn't only the giants. It was also the little people as well, who were called cannibals. And we're going to, find out more about why from just some of these short descriptions of these people. But I'm including Bigfoot in there because these creatures are rather large, 7, 8, 9 feet tall, hair all over their bodies. But when I hear these stories, often all often think about people who have hypertrichosis, these people with hair all over their bodies, you know, similar to a Bigfoot. You see there's all these different congenital types, acquired types. They're not sure about a lot of this. If you read through this, okay, you'll find out that they don't really know a lot about what causes this or whatever. But apparently, and they'll say, well, people are afflicted with this, but are they afflicted with it? They just have hair all over their body. It seems to me that, whatever other things are functioning in their body nothing else seems to be a problem. They seems like they're in relatively good health, other than they have hair all over their bodies. It's just not accepted in our society or whatever. Just different kinds of people. But they say they're afflicted. But what does that do to? Is it because of social norms and that's it? I mean, evidently there's no other health issues that they have other than they have hair all. Are they Bigfoot, a similar kind of giant that survived into the present day? They weren't killed off completely by the native peoples and other peoples around the world because they're a totally different kind of creature. And you know, what is Bigfoot? I mean, is it what kind of creature is it? It seems to be awfully tall, like a giant, right? And what about the cryptids in general? I mean, I think, okay, and this is my own personal hypothesis about creatures like Bigfoot and other cryptids. It seems to me that they might be, genetically engineered organisms. Or why would I say that? Because of corn. Okay, it's just corn is impossible, folks. It's just impossible that it exists. Okay, it goes right over a lot of people's heads, I think, but I go over it on the mystery of corn on this channel, and I guess a lot of people just sort of ho hum it. But we've seen evidences of all different sorts of things: machine tooling, the building of these great stone monuments, et cetera, all these sort of circumstantial evidence of more advanced civilization of the past. But where can we see something that also might indicate this? Well, it's corn, obviously, okay. And originally it was thought it was 8 and 9,000 years old, but apparently they found pollen that was 80,000 years old. It's there's nobody denying this in mainstream or whatever, but if it's 80,000 years old, it's even more impossible because it's obvious that corn had to be designed by human beings. And as I read from Charles C. Mann's book, the University of California calls it the single greatest feat of genetic engineering by man ever, ever, including now. Okay? It would take us hundreds of millions of dollars in research just to even attempt to create something like corn from a grass. Or they don't know what it was created from. They're still looking for the plant that it originated from. But if it's 80,000, it doesn't matter whether it's 8,000 years old or 80,000 years old. Humans or some intelligent being had to design it. It's an impossibility that caveman did this. Impossible. And the more advanced civilization, I believe, because of this 80,000-year-old corn, okay, is that the more advanced civilization was sometime in the ancient past, greater than 100,000 years ago, up to 80,000 years ago. Okay, and the time in between was wrought with cataclysms like Randall Carlson goes over. He's somebody who thinks that mankind reached a certain pinnacle of advancement, and these great cataclysms came along and reduced people back into cavemen, essentially, okay? And where does man come from? Chimpanzees have more chromosomes than man. Okay, one of the highest evolved organisms on the planet. A chimpanzee almost has identical DNA, but we have less chromosomes than them and wackier ones for some reason. And we showed up 200,000 years ago. Okay, and who knows how many other things have been genetically engineered from some ancient, more advanced civilization. Corn is impossible, guys. The cobs never fall from the stalk. They never fall. You understand? It's impossible for this plant to propagate itself without assistance. Okay, and supposedly caveman invented something that we can't do now. That's impossible. Okay, it's clear evidence of a more advanced civilization in the past that we don't know anything about. And the stories about the giants or large hominids in the Americas goes way, way back, okay? Before you even jump, before you take that leap in logic to the Anunnaki or the Nephilim, before you even go there, okay? Keep it down to earth here, okay? We're talking about, we don't even know where the giants or whatever came from. There's a whole different story of the past. And little hominids and hominids of every variety with horns and tails and extra teeth and all sorts of things. Okay, we don't even know anything about that. Before you even get to Nephilim, and I don't know, maybe, I don't know, but before we get there, let's keep it down to earth. Let's tackle one thing at a time, okay? We know it's homegrown, at least, in much of this history, the accounts of the giants that we read about. So, look, who knows what else is genetically engineered, but it's corn certainly is. They can't figure out what plants it came from. If it's 80,000 years old, like they say, okay, well, then look, it might be based on plants that are now long extinct that they can't identify. Okay, the Americas were totally destroyed by something, great cataclysms in the past, many, many times over, or whatever, and everything was erased over here. That's why they call it the New World or whatever, because it's been totally destroyed. And whatever is there is new because whatever was old was completely destroyed. Okay, and it seems like there's lots of evidence for much older organized society in the Americas than there is in anywhere else in the world. Okay, so what is a Bigfoot or any other cryptid? Okay, well, we know, look, if corn is the single most greatest feat of genetic engineering ever, here's what Monsanto does, right, with the genetic use restriction technology, Terminator seeds. Okay, maybe some of these, cryptids were designed not to reproduce. But the problem is with these sort of things is that nature always overcomes these things. Maybe these cryptids can't breed in large numbers. Maybe it's difficult for them to carry a pregnancy. Maybe it's difficult for them to conceive. Okay, because they were designed as genetic use restricted. Okay, this is what Monsanto does with their suicide seeds, Terminator seeds. You see that here, Terminator technology, suicide seeds. So if people are able to design something in the past so advanced as corn, where it's totally dependent on human beings to break it down and sow it for it to propagate, right? No, cavemen didn't invent this 8 and 9,000 years ago in the highlands of Mexico. It's impossible. We can't do it. And you think people or starving cavemen are going to plant crops for hundreds and hundreds of years to develop something like corn and get no food yield out of it or hardly any when they got to survive? Why would they do that? Okay, so look, it's obvious. Corn is a clear evidence of a more advanced civilization existing in the past, even greater than with technology even greater than our own, but alien to us. okay? Because they took the various phenomena in nature and applied it to technology in ways that we might not ever think of. And that's why people jump immediately to the alien theories and all this kind of stuff. Whereas these aliens are just simply creatures that live in space who are, um, biofluorescent and bioelectric and biomechanical, and probably silicon based life forms anyway. And they commute by telepathy. Who knows if Bigfoot communicate like that? But is Bigfoot a genetically engineered thing? Well, I think so. I think we are too. I mean, the stories of the Bible, the stories of the Sumerians, other stories about, the creation of man around the world. Well, we probably are genetically created beings as well, like corn. We're like corn. This is what we're like. We're genetically created. There's no reason for us to have less chromosomes than a chimpanzee and weirder ones. Okay? We probably created, like most things, like all the hybrids of dogs and whatever it is, created for a task to do something. And probably companions. Well, these giants knew that the gravity was changing and they had to create something that they could breed with to carry their genes into the new gravity of the new expanded Earth. Okay, look, this is just my theories, but look, at the very least, a more advanced civilization than ours existed in the past. And they invented corn. What is they think it's the only thing they might have invented in the past there if they were genetically modifying things or inventing new genetic organisms or whatever? Well, they were probably invented a lot of stuff. Nobody knows where domestic animals came from. They have a lot of theories and stuff. They don't know where they came from. Well, maybe they weren't domesticated in the ways that we think. Maybe they're genetically engineered as long as well as a lot of food plants and other useful plants. Okay, who's to say that's not the case? So maybe Bigfoot is what that is as well. Okay, and I believe it seems to me that these Bigfoot creatures, if the giants existed in the past, were 12 and 14 and 16 feet tall, well, they could just bop a little Bigfoot who was like 8 and 9 feet tall on the head, tell him get back to work. I think they were created. I think these people made choices in the past that we wouldn't make about what they could manufacture. Maybe they decided that they could create robots, but they decided against it because of what it would damage the environment. And these people were not about that in the past. Maybe they made that decision. Hey, we're making those decisions now. So who's to say what these people thought in the past? Okay, they certainly had reverence for a lot of the animals, as we know through the native peoples. They had reverence for all these animals, and maybe that's one of the reasons why there weren't a lot of mammal predation from these people in the past, and they only ate vegetables and took from the sea and didn't eat a lot of land animals. Okay, you have to put all these things together, folks. Okay, like I said, corn is impossible. Impossible. No caveman made corn 8 and 9,000 years ago or 80,000 years ago. Okay, it had to be a society that at least advanced as ours is right now. It's impossible. There is no other way. All right. We can't do it with hundreds of millions of dollars of research even to attempt it, let alone do it. Okay. They can't figure out where the corn plant comes from. And it can't exist in a wild. It's totally dependent on us. And we have no way of inventing a plant like that now. So you're telling me cavemen did? I don't think so. Okay. And what else is genetically altered? Or even the giants of the past were genetically altered. They didn't know because the giants went through as many catastrophes as Homo sapiens, okay? And they had no continuity with their past, probably at one point. Okay, so many thousands and tens of thousands of years have passed. They don't know what the story of their past. 80,000 years, 100,000 years passed. The giants didn't know their own story either. All right, so look, let's read a little bit about these Native American giants of myth and legend and talk about it a little bit and how it sort of supports my own evidence for these stories of the giants being cannibals or any other creature or people, whether it be Bigfoot or dwarves or little people or whatever it is being cannibals. These are just demonization stories. First, they told as children's stories after centuries and centuries and centuries, but the adults believe that too after the story's been told a million friggin' times. Okay, so it's real easy to kill off the giants and the dwarves and the little people and the Bigfoot and whatever it is. Real easy because you told all of these nonsense stories about them that demonize them because you didn't like them. That's what happens. And I've gone over this on his channel where I showed World War II propaganda by way of the Warner Brothers cartoons and Disney cartoons or whatever. This is what we do to the enemy. We make gross exaggerations, gross caricatures of them and demonize them in so many different ways that just aren't true. Okay, they're obviously biased and prejudicial. All right, for reasons. They're our enemies, so we make them out to look like fools and demons and monsters and everything else. Okay, that's it. There's no reality to it whatsoever that they were cannibals. List of Native American giants and ogres in various tribes. Giants in Native American folklore are usually described as being 40 to 60 feet tall, large enough to throw humans into a sack or burden basket the way a human hunter would do with rabbits. In a few cases, Native American giants are described as being even more immense, being the size of the tallest pine trees, which works out to 150 to 200 feet, and catching whales the way humans catch fish, which all these stories may be allegorical, but in some grain of truth to them in some respect, and none whatsoever in others. Okay, because the stories have been told for thousands and thousands of years. And you know what happens to the stories as they go round and round and round and round. Okay, so let's read. These are just brief descriptions, so it's not going to tell the whole story, but it's just interesting what they say about these things and how it's helped support my argument about these just being simple bogeyman stories told to these people that demonize their enemies. There's not a grain of truth in it whatsoever that the giants were cannibals. They may have even been peaceful peoples for all we know. They had to protect themselves. They had to make weapons to protect themselves or just for utilitarian purposes. But look, maybe they were peaceful. It seems so in some cases, as we hear on East Coast Indians. Okay, so this is an Asin. Okay, so the tribal affiliation is the Alsea tribe. Aeson is a cannibal ogress from the mythology of the Alsea tribe. Like other monstrous ogres of the northwest coast, Aeson preys on children and is often the subject of bogeyman stories. You see that right there. Okay, bogeyman stories, okay, told to frighten children into avoiding dangerous behavior. All right. It's the same stories about the Lovelock Cave Indians, the same stories about the Salmon Ruins giants, the same stories. Okay, bogeyman stories. You get told that as a child, and that's what you believe all your life when you see these other people. Okay, until one day it comes to a head and they exterminate all of them, but not all of them, and some of them integrated into the native peoples. It's clear as day from their own stories of tall chieftains and existing tall chieftains when the explorers and settlers got here and colonists. Okay. So there you saw it right there. Bogeyman stories that they told their children about the giants to make them avoid behaving dangerous behavior, participating in dangerous behavior. It's as simple as that. Okay. Basket ogress. Okay, so this is from the Quackatool, Tlingit, Heiltsuk, and Salish tribes. Again, I think it's the northwest coast. The basket ogress is a marauding giant common to the folklore of many northwest coast tribes. She catches humans, especially naughty or careless children, and carries them off in an enormous pack basket to eat them in her lair. Okay, so there's your cannibalism story. It's a fairy tale, a baby story that you tell babies, okay? Like grim fairy tales, okay? Based on a little truth, but, completely fictional, okay? Yeah, maybe these basket ogress people, whoever they are, existed. That's true, but they weren't cannibals carrying the children off. It's just a story to tell their kids to straighten them out when they're acting up. Luckily, she is rather dim witted and her prey usually manage to escape. Although there are some Northwest Coast legends where Basket Woman has a greater mythological importance, in most tribes she primarily plays the role of a bogeyman and fairy tale adversary. You see that right there. Okay? It's the same story about the Lovelock people. Fairy tale, bogeyman. All right. Don't believe it for a second. The peaceful Paiutes and the peaceful Pueblos weren't as peaceful as we're led to believe in the past. Big Owl Man, it's Apache. Big Owl is a malicious and dangerous giant, often used as a bogeyman. In children's stories, ay. When are you going to get it through your head? Forget about L.A. Marzulli and Steve Quayle and all Fritz Zimmerman. All these people write on the Giants, want to say they're cannibals and use Native American stories to reinforce the stories of the Bible, which were just more propaganda at relatively the same time periods against these large people. We decided as human beings across the globe to get rid of all these people because they scared us. They scared our old ladies, and we couldn't stand to hear our old ladies complain about it because some of these giants apparently were very reasonable that the tribes dealt with here. They weren't like they were like drooling monsters going, they're just people, bigger people or whatever. But the old lady's like, they're scaring our kids, they're scaring me, get rid of them, all right. The guy was like, I don't really bother me any, but I got to do what my old lady says or whatever, because my kids got to be sad. All these rationalizations. Oh, they're bogeyman. I heard about it when I was a kid. And now that I'm a doll, I go right over there and kill them because I can't stand to hear my old lady bitch anymore about it. It's driving me crazy. In some Apache tribes, Big Owl also plays a more important mythological role as an early adversary of the War Twins. Like other legendary Apache beings, Big Owl is sometimes described as having human form, in this case, a man-eating ogre, and other times animal form, in this case, a horned owl, large enough to carry off a child. And it's always with the children, because, it scares everybody, the children, and it scares the adults because they're just, they're not the priests and the leaders who understand things more than their people. They keep their people under control. The parents keep the kids under control with these stories. The leaders keep the people under control. Same kind of stories. Okay? This is the legacy of human beings everywhere on this planet. Up to the same stuff, no matter where you go. Kadaja is a man-eating monster of Caddo folklore. The Kadaja is usually described as a kind of hideous horned ogre. It's interesting that they say horned ogre. How many accounts of giants have we heard with horns? Okay. Starting to add up all of these things together like I have been doing. Okay, but in some legends, it is portrayed as a horned serpent. Very interesting. The horned serpent, as repeated in the walls of New England over and over and over again. all the walls in New England, all of the Aboriginal walls are serpents. Thanks to Budcat7 finding that out for us. More like the Cherokee Uktena, in all cases, the Gadada is considered an enemy and predator of humankind. Of course it is. That makes it a lot easier to kill them when you tell everybody that, even though there isn't a speck of truth about it. Chenu, this is Micmac, this is East Coast. Chenus are the evil man-eating ice giants of northern Wabanaki legends. A Chenu was once a human being who either became possessed by an evil spirit or committed a terrible crime, especially cannibalism. That's right, that's a horrible crime. And get this, withholding food from a starving person. I just find that very interesting. You call a guy who's withholding food from you this Chenu as a pejorative, okay? Causing his heart to turn to ice. Okay, so they're ice giants because their hearts are icy. In a few legends, a human has been successfully rescued from the frozen heart of a Chenu, but usually once a person has been transformed into a Chenu, their only escape is death. Okay, so think of these stories as allegories that have been told thousands and thousands of times, and who knows what the original story was. Probably more truthful, but, you know, we're trying to parse that from looking at these things. We know that the giants weren't cannibals because there's no evidence of wear on their teeth from eating red meat, which would be corrosive to their teeth. There's no ice giants. The page is not found, unfortunately, about the Algonquin, but again, East Coast Indians with the ice giants. But yet there's stories of good giants, which I've gone over on my channel. But again, folks, good giants don't sell. Okay, cannibalism and giants sells books and lectures like crazy. Okay, and Anunnaki and Nephilim, and that sells a lot of books. What I'm trying to tell you is probably more fantastic and more interesting, but apparently people are just brainwashed by the History Channel and other TV shows or whatever it is. You can be sure if it's coming from there, folks. That's not the truth, okay? I'm trying to get at it for you. Kiwakwa or Giwakwa. This is Abenaki. This is also East Coast. The Passamaquoddy and the Penobscot are all like from Maine and whatnot. Giwakwas or Kiwakwa are the evil man-eating ice giants of southern Wabanaki legends. According to most legends, a Giwakwa was once a human being who either became possessed by an evil spirit or committed a terrible crime, especially cannibalism or withholding food from a starving person, causing his heart to turn to ice. In some Abenaki legends, the stone giants, which we know the stone giants are called the stone giants, not because they were made of stone, not because they had stone on their bodies, because they were the people who built the walls and chambers and effigies and camp. Do you dig? All right. We're not transformed humans, but primordial man-eating monsters defeated by the culture hero Gluskabi, whoever that was. Okay, so again, just more demonization. Here we have the demonization of the people who built the walls. Kaloa, Creek Indian ogre. Okay, this would be like from the Ohio area, Creek Indians. Kaloa is a kind of hairy, man-eating ogre from Creek mythology. Some recent Creek storytellers have translated it as gorilla. Okay, so here we have a crossover into Bigfoot territory, but we have a separate list for that. But here we have one tail of a giant that crosses over into being some sort of gorilla. Okay, even though the Indians never saw a gorilla, so they don't know what a gorilla is. Okay, it can't be translated as gorilla. They don't know what a gorilla is. No gorillas in North America. Okay, so either that's misdirection, or whoever translates from these people want to add their own 2 cents to change it. Okay, David Politis did the investigation on over 100 hair samples. They all showed human DNA. Cuckoo, Wabanaki, Indian giant. The cuckoo or goju is a kind of man-eating giant, usually but not always described as female. Goju is so huge that she carries the people she catches in a big bag over her shoulder, the way the human hunters carry rabbits. The Micmac name cuckoo may derive from their word for earthquake, Kyuku, since she is so large her footsteps shake the earth. According to some legends, Goju is a sea monster covered in scales who preys mostly on people paddling canoes or walking along the beach. In other legends, Goju lives in the mountains and is often mistaken for a boulder until it's too late. All of these stories fascinate me because whatever allegorical meaning they have comes with some of these descriptions, and I just can only speculate what it might be. But again, we're talking about people and large stones and boulders, large people. Okay, there's a connection there for the stone walls and other constructions. Kukwis, Micmac. Kukwis is a kind of man-eating ogre from Micmac Indian folklore. The Kukwis are greedy, hairy, and sometimes described as having bear-like heads. The name Kukwis is diminutive form of cuckoo, giant. So Kukwis literally means something similar to little giant. Little is relative, though. Cuckoo, usually spelled Goju, is sometimes described as being taller than the highest pine trees, which would make her at least 150 feet tall. Kukwis are usually described as around 20, 30 feet tall, large enough to carry children in a sack. And of course, they're carrying the children because these are what these tales are really directed as children, and then increased and gradually increased to something more serious as an adult. Okay, just as similar as we do it in our own societies. Lofa, Chickasaw Indian ogre. The Lofa is a malevolent ogre-like monster of Chickasaw folklore. His name literally means flayer or skinner, a reference to his gruesome habit of flaying the skin from his victims. In some legends, he attempts to abduct Chickasaw women. He is sometimes described as a giant and other times as a large, hairy, smelly man, like a Bigfoot, you think, leading some people to associate him with the Bigfoot legend. See how we get these crossovers of the giants? So there's definitely some relationship here between the Bigfoots and the giants. Why are they still around? Well, maybe it's because they were isolated. They were originally created not to reproduce, but yet they overcame that. Okay. They stayed away from humans for the most part, whereas the giants did not because they were more similar. The Bigfoots can't speak, or maybe we just can't understand their language or whatever. But, look, maybe they chiefly communicate through telepathy as a skill that they developed on their own. Maybe, intelligence again. They found out, look, recently, guys, if you don't know, in the last few years, they determined that intelligence is not dictated by size of brain, but by structure of brain. Nothing more, because dolphins have a brain that's more advanced than ours. Yet, they're not driving around in cars or flying in airplanes or anything. They don't need to. They get their food when they want or whatever. They're so much more better off than us. We have no idea. Their lives are not complicated with a lot of junk, worthless junk. Can you imagine? You're like king of the sea. Nothing's their enemy, practically. You don't have to worry about much. Moshop, and I remember this tale. I went over it on my channel. Moshop is a giant. It's from Wampanoag, Mohegan, and Pequot, which are up there in Connecticut and Massachusetts and a little bit in New York State. That's the areas where these people existed in the past. Up where Mohegan's son is, it's the Mohegans there. They're different, but related to the Pequot more than they are to the Iroquois, I believe. Most of his giant, who's the culture hero, okay, is a giant who is a culture hero. Okay, they're not all bad in folklore. You understand that, right? So you could just forget about what L.A. Marzulli says and everybody else, Fritz Zimmerman, and I don't care who. I don't care who. Native American, I don't care who. Doesn't matter who they are. It's a propaganda. It's an anti-giant propaganda. Telling you, all right. We decided as a species one day in the past that we're going to get rid of all these weird hominids running around that we didn't like. Okay. Are you married? Were you born in a family or whatever? How would you like some big giant guys living next door, 12 foot tall, and their kids beating your kids up at the bus stop? Would you like that? Okay, we got rid of these people. Okay, did they deserve it? Probably not. But we did. Because that's what we do best. We're good at that, killing. See, it's one of our, things we're most proficient at. So most of his giant, who's the culture hero of the Mohegan and Wampanoag tribes, sometimes referred to as a transformer by folklorists, Moshop is strongly associated with whales, like they find in the mountains of Vermont for some reason. Whole whales, whole skeleton whale laying up in the mountain for some reason, way, way up, 2,000 feet. How'd that get there? In most tribal traditions, he would catch whales to feed the people. And in some stories, Moshop and or his children eventually transform into whales themselves. Moshop has a wife named Squanit, who is a powerful medicine woman of the little people. This story of this reminds me of the one of the first short animation features way back in either the early 70s, Sky Whales, where these people all of a sudden their lives they have to die, and they don't die. What they become is these sky whales. So these people who live in the clouds and hunt the sky whales. They hunt the sky whales, but yet they become the sky whales. Very interesting story, probably based on this kind of folklore, right? The Mui Lenape Indian giant. This would be, also East Coast, middle of the country, could be anywhere in Canada. The Mui is a man-eating ice giant of Lenape legend, like the Wendigo of the Ojibwe and Cree tribes. Not many tales of Mui are ever recorded, but like the better-known Wendigo, Mue was a fearsome monster associated with starvation, cannibalism, and sin. A person who tasted human flesh or went mad from the cold might turn into a Mue, and at least one Lenape legend, a Mue monster that is treated kindly and given civilized food to eat can be turned back into a human. Okay, so could be, stories of starvation, and, you better work hard and get your food and learn how to hunt and everything. Otherwise, you starve. And, there's lots of tales like this in folklore about all sorts of things, even vegetables and plants. The Shampi, Choctaw Indian. The Shampi is a malevolent ogre-like monster of Chickasaw folklore. In some legends, he attempts to abduct Choctaw women. In others, he is a man-eater. He is sometimes described as a giant and other times as a large, hairy man, leading some people to associate him with the Bigfoot legend. His most salient feature is his smell. The Shampi smell is so overpowering that a person cannot bear to be around him, making him difficult to fight. But it certainly must make him difficult, not very difficult to find with an odor like that, like dogs and whatnot. Something don't make sense there, but they must hide themselves pretty damn good. Stoneclad, Cherokee Indian giant, and Cherokee are related to the Iroquois. That's why they mentioned Stonecoat Iroquois and the Wendigo Ojibwe. The Cherokees are related to the Iroquois Haudenosaunee. Stoneclad is a monster from Cherokee folklore. Details about Stoneclad vary from telling to telling. In some versions, there is only one, while in others, there are a whole race of Stoneclads. In some versions, Stoneclad is man-sized. Excuse me. Or indeed is a human witch that turned himself into an invulnerable monster. In others, he is a stone-skinned giant like the Stonecoats of the northern Iroquois tribe. In all cases, he has rock-like plates of armor that protect him from fire, cold, and weapons. He's defeated only through sapping his magical power by destroying his talismans or exposing him to menstruating women. And believe it or not, folks, menstruating women are used in a lot of tales. I know down in Texas, one of my ex-girlfriends happened to be from Texas and related to the Aboriginal people from there, the Indians from there, said that they used to tell young girls who had first had their periods, they were first menstruating, that they shouldn't go into the fields because a snake would be able to smell them. Okay, and I'm sure that's true. Animals could smell that from a mile away, especially if you're in the wild. You might not want that. Weetucks. This is Narragansett. This is up by me here off Long Island here. All right. The Weetucks. Weetucks is a giant who is the culture hero of the Narragansett tribes, and I think I've covered the Weetucks on my channel about the Narragansett. The islands were formed by his sandals. He kicked up some dirt with his sandals, threw his sandal and kicked up some dirt. The hero of the Narragansett tribe, sometimes referred to as a transformer by folklorists. Okay, so here another good giant that you never heard about, and there's other stories. I've gone over it on my channel here. All right. The good giants that you never heard about. In some cases, they were good, and you can be sure in those cultures, the giants integrated with the tribe, no problem. And most likely it was female to male, female giant and normal sized male. That would seem to be the most successful pregnancy that there could be between them, a normal Homo sapien and one of these giants, which very well could only be related, may even be a separate species, as some people have postulated, okay, but able to interbreed, so similar enough to interbreed, but most likely is female to male and not male to female, because a large female with a normal sized male, the chances of the pregnancy being viable would be a lot higher. You see what I'm saying? Wendigo. We've heard about that. The Anishinaabe tribe. Okay, this is also Algonquin. So this is East Coast to the Middle States of people who are related somehow, like the Algonquin and Chippewa, Ottawa. Wendigos are the evil man-eating giants of the Anishinaabe mythology. Wendigos play the roles of monsters and bogeymen stories in some legends. In others, Chippewa people who commit sins, especially selfishness, gluttony, or cannibalism, are turned into a Wendigo as punishment. Okay, do we have problems with weird people engaging in cannibalism in our society? Oh, you've heard about in the past? Of course we do. Well, these people are just people in the past, okay? There are people in their tribes, nutcases who do such a thing, maybe. Okay, so they told these stories about them to scare people away from engaging in bad behaviors and sins, especially selfishness and gluttony. Okay, the appearance of a Wendigo is huge, monstrous, and made or coated in ice. The human it once was is still frozen inside the monster where its heart should be, and must be killed to defeat the Wendigo. In a few legends, a human has been successfully rescued from the heart of a Wendigo, but usually once a person has been possessed by a Wendigo spirit, the only escape is death. All right, that's terrible. Too bad. The Wimpy, Micmac, that's up on the East Coast. Wimpy is a character in Micmac legend. He's a giant with magical powers who is an adversary to the culture hero Glooskap. Having captured the hero's grandmother, Nukumi, and adopted brother, Abistinuj, in some versions of the story, Wimpy is an evil, brutish villain who is killed by Glooskap, while in others he is boisterous but honorable and is defeated by Glooskap in a series of tests of magical power. So he was boisterous but honorable. In one version of the Wimpy legend, he was even the originator of the game lacrosse, which Glooskap took from him and shared with the people. So here we have heroes of native peoples, tribes, taking practices from the giants who knows how old the game of lacrosse is. It could be tens of thousands of years old. Okay? Carried by the giants, history and folklore. And who knows if they even knew their past and history exactly. Okay, so this is a Cree giant story. Watigo are evil man-eating giants of Cree mythology. Watigos play the roles of monsters and bogeymen again. Always bogeyman. What they mean by bogeyman is a fictional story to tell the kids to keep them well behaved. Okay, so it's the same exact story as the giants at Lovelock Cave. Okay, not a real story. No real cannibals. Cree people commit sins, especially selfishness, gluttony, and cannibalism, are turned into a Wetiko as punishment. The appearance of Wetiko is huge, monstrous, and made of or coated in ice. In some Cree stories, look directly at a Wetiko will leave a person paralyzed and helpless against it. Wetiko's heart is said to be made of ice, and a monster can only be permanently killed if its heart is completely melted. And I just find that interesting that will leave a person paralyzed. Okay, are we talking about telepathy here? Telepathic link, a mind link? Okay, because it's just interesting that they say these about UFOs as well, and the UFO connection with Bigfoot as well. Okay, and you often hear about people paralyzed by UFOs. Okay, is that creatures that have telepathic powers? I always say that the UFOs, these little beams they shoot at each other, are neural neutralizing rays. Okay, well, I'm going to go over that at a later date, give my own UFO story too, but got to talk about these things, folks. They're related somehow. And okay, so that's all the Native American legend and myths and folklore about the giants there, at least compiled here. And there's some stories about it. I'm going to read some of these stories later on because they're interesting as well. But there's also these Native American Bigfoot figures in myth and legend where the story seems so similar. There's not a lot of them because the hyperlinks, you can see there's not a lot of hyperlinks here. You have to research all these things separately. But let's just see what it has to say, and then we'll be done with the video here. But I thought you'd be interested in hearing this. Native American Bigfoot figures of myth and legend. Of all legendary Native American beings, none has captured the imagination of non-native people as much as Sasquatch and other Bigfoot quote-unquote creatures. So intense is this fascination that some Bigfoot enthusiasts seem to have labeled just about every mythological creature ever known in the Western Hemisphere as another name for Sasquatch. They are amusing collections of Native American names for Bigfoot online that include names of giants, dwarves, ghosts, gods, underwater monsters, four-legged predators, predators, an enormous bird, and a disembodied flying head. If you'd like to learn more about some of the mythical creatures to be found on those lists, please feel free to look them up on our Native American Monsters page or our broader Native American mythological characters website. This website strictly deals with these things. We'll look at some of that stuff later on too. If we interpret the English word Bigfoot to refer to only to creatures like Sasquatch, wild hairy men of the forest that are human-sized or slightly taller, then here's our list of Native American Big Feet. Note that most of these legends are told by tribes of the Pacific Northwest region, Northern California, Western Oregon, and Washington State, British Columbia, Alaska, and the Yukon. There are also many stories involving wild hairy men of the forest in the plains and woodland tribes of the U.S., but most of those are forest dwarves, no taller than a human toddler. But we just read a whole bunch of them that said the giants were. They said they were giants, but they were hairy. You can find some stories about them on our Native American Little People page. They have many similarities to Bigfoot creatures except for their size. So very interesting. Little people also hairy all over their bodies, okay? Do they have hypertrichosis? Okay, human beings can have it. What about these creatures? And they just, nothing wrong with them other than they got hair all over their body and that's it. Maybe they went to go live in the forest and be secretive. I don't know. I'm just throwing it out there, okay? There's nothing wrong with these things. It's just, hairy. Okay, the Bigfoot figure is common to the folklore of most Northwest Native American tribes. Native American Bigfoot legends usually describe the creatures as around 6 to 9 feet tall. 9 feet tall is awfully big, folks. A very strong, hairy, uncivilized, and often foul-smelling, usually living in the woods and often foraging at night. Native American Bigfoot creatures were almost always said to be unable to speak human languages, using whistle grunts and gestures to communicate with each other and maybe telepathy. In some stories, male Bigfeet are said to be able to mate with human women. In some native stories, Bigfoot may have minor supernatural powers, the ability to turn invisible, for example. But they are always considered physical creatures of the forest, not spirits or ghosts. That is where the intertribal Bigfoot similarities end, however. In the Bigfoot myths of some tribes, Sasquatch and his relatives are generally shy and benign figures. They may take things that do not belong to them or even kidnap a human wife, but do not harm people and may even come to their aid. Sometimes Bigfoot is considered a guardian of nature in these tribes. These more benevolent Bigfeet usually appear alone or in a small family unit and may exchange gifts or use sign language to communicate with Native American communities. But Bigfoot legends from other tribes describe them as malevolent creatures who attack humans, play dangerous tricks on them, or steal children. They may even eat people. These more dangerous Bigfoot monsters, known as stick Indians or bush Indians, are sometimes found in large groups or even villages, which engage in warfare with neighboring Indian tribes. Okay, so you can see all these different things. They're all over the place. Some of them are good, some of them are bad. Okay, maybe in reality, the Bigfoot creatures can relate more to us because they're also a product of the giant. Maybe they feel sympathetic towards us. They can't speak, but maybe they speak through telepathy. It seems to be so. They just mentioned people paralyzed by it, and also UFOs paralyzing people, and somehow they communicate with. I'm just saying what other people say. It's not what I say. I'm just saying what I've heard. So let's hear about a couple of these things here real quick, and then we'll end this video. It's long, I know, but I want to talk about these things. Okay, so this is the Bella Coola Bigfoot, the bogs. Bogs are large, hairy, wild men of the forest. In the folklore of more northern tribes, such as the Bella Coola, bogs are malevolent, dangerous monsters who may eat people or molest women. But in Chinook and Salishan versions of these legends, bogs are sometimes depicted as more benign beings, like the Halkomelem Sasquatch. Sometimes bogs are also called by the name Skookum, which is a word from the Chinook jargon trade language meaning big or powerful, from the trade language. language. Isn't that interesting? There's a trade language, okay? Big trading networks in this country thousands of years before the Europeans got here, or anybody else for that matter. This is sometimes a source of confusion because skookum has been used in Chinook literature to refer to many different sorts of powerful beings, not just Box. Okay, so interesting story there. Bush Indians, these are the bad guys here, I know that. This is Alaskan. Bush Indians are hairy wild men of the tundra of Atna and other Alaskan Athabascan folklore. Bush Indians are very aggressive and often feature as bogeymen, okay? Bogeymen in stories told to children. Sometimes kidnapping or even eating unwary kids. So behave, kids, or the bogeyman is going to eat you. No reason to go killing them. They didn't really do that, but tell your kids that for centuries and centuries and centuries, it's real easy to kill them. As adults, you're giving the same cockamamie stories, but only by other adults. The Chiatanka, this is the Lakota and Dakota Indians. Chiatanka is a large, shaggy woodland being of Sioux folklore. Some people associate him with the legend of Bigfoot. His name literally means big elder brother. Okay? Doesn't sound too vicious to me. Okay? Why is he an elder brother? Well, we were created as companions, and Bigfoots were created as workers by these giant hominids of the past and their more advanced civilizations some 100,000 years ago, 80,000 years ago at the very least. That's a long time ago. Okay, it's not any time recent. Maybe Atlantis wasn't 10,000 years ago. Maybe it was 100,000 years ago. I don't know. Nobody does. But it seems with 80,000-year-old corn that had to be invented by a more advanced civilization. It's impossible. 80,000 years ago, you're talking about people who are real cavemen. How the hell did they do that? Well, we can't do it with billions of dollars of equipment. Something's wrong there. Lofa, Chickasaw, Indian Bigfoot. The Lofa is malevolent, ogre-like monster of Chickasaw folklore. His name literally means flayer or skinner, a reference to his gruesome habit of flaying the skin from his victims. In some legends, he attempts to abduct Chickasaw women. He is sometimes described as a giant and other times as a large, hairy, smelly man, leading some people to associate him with the Bigfoot legend. It was never a creature or animal. It's a big, hairy, smelly man. And the Native Americans had no idea what a gorilla was. Nobody did until they got to Africa. Maximista. This is Cheyenne. Maximista is a large, hairy, humanoid creature somewhat like the Sasquatch or Bigfoot of the northwestern tribes, only with bird-like feet. Very strange. The name Maximista literally means big monster or big spirit being. Though Maximista was considered a powerful and dangerous being, it was also said to be rather shy and stayed out of people's way, unlike the aggressive cannibal dwarves. You see this, cannibal dwarves here? Okay? Let's just click on the cannibal dwarves for a second because I want to discuss it because this is just another bogeyman demonization story against people we didn't like, some little weird people. We don't like that. Okay? Just get real with yourself about human beings, Homo sapiens. We don't like weird little people. We don't like weird big people. We don't like weird people, period. Okay? We like to get rid of them. Although benign races of small magical creatures exist in many Native American tribes, the little people of the Arapahoes and neighboring tribes, also known as cannibal dwarves or enemy dwarves, similar to the enemy, ancient enemy, of the Pueblo peoples there, the people that they call the oh, shoot. But anyway, it's the same sort of thing. It's the same demonization going on, only with small people. Okay, are dangerous man eaters and particular enemies of the Arapaho tribe. The Arapaho name Hekasitahi literally means little people. Tehihan comes from the Arapaho word for strong. Arapaho dwarves are said to have superhuman strength. In some texts, they are referred to as Nimrigar instead, which is a name borrowed from the neighboring Shoshone tribe, who had similar legends about ferocious little people. Descriptions of the cannibal dwarves vary somewhat from community to community, but they are usually said to be the size of children, dark skinned, and extremely aggressive. Some storytellers say that they had the power to turn themselves invisible, while others say they were hard to spot simply because they moved with incredible speed. Some suggest that the dwarves' warlike temperament comes because they must be killed in battle to reach the dwarf afterworld. Others believe that they were gluttons who habitually killed more than they could eat just because they could. According to most versions of the story, the race of cannibal dwarves was destroyed in an ancient war with the Arapahoes and other allied Native American tribes. So again, a similar story to them killing off all the giants, and probably for specious reasons. And the ancient Pueblo for ancient enemies, the Anasazi. That's who the ancient enemy. But originally, that word originally said meant old ones, and then later on they refined it. I guess when they were able to refine the Pueblo language there, they said, "Oh, that meant ancient enemy." That's what it meant, not old ones. Okay, so they changed that for some reason. Okay, to further confuse everything. Okay, so we got the Maximista, right? We got that already. Okay, so here we are at Sasquatch. We all know that one, right? West Coast. Sasquatch is the most famous legendary quote unquote Bigfoot creature. According to Halkamalem and other Coast Salish traditions, Sasquatch was a powerful but generally benign supernatural creature in the shape of a very large, hairy, wild man. Its Halkamalem name is pronounced similar to Seskauts. Seskauts. So Sasquatch was Seskauts. Okay, benign and not eating anybody or whatever. So similar to stories that you have some Bigfoot and Sasquatch that eat people, some that don't. Okay, again, you don't know the story of the past, and the story of the past would probably explain some of the reasons behind all of these things. Champay, Choctaw Indian Bigfoot. The Champay is a malevolent ogre-like monster of Chickasaw folklore. In some legends, he attempts to abduct Choctaw women. In others, he is a man-eater. He is sometimes described as a giant, and other times as a large, hairy man, leading some people to associate him with the Bigfoot legend. His most salient feature is his smell. A Champay's smell is so overpowering that a person cannot bear to be around him, making him difficult to fight. Okay, maybe that's protection for them, their smell. Could be, I guess. Siatko, Chehalis Indians, Puget Sound. This is West Coast up in Washington State. In Salishan mythology, Siatko are largely, Seattle named it. Siatko are large, hairy, wild men of the forest. There are two different kinds of Siatko that appear in folklore. Powerful but comparatively benign forest spirits, sometimes referred to as night people, similar to the Sasquatch of Halkamalem tribes. The fearsome, malevolent man-eaters, sometimes referred to as stick Indians. The two beings are often confused in folklore and anthropology alike, so they're confused. Okay, they're confusing things because the whole situation is confused. Okay, there's no cannibalism going on, just baby stories to demonize them. Because it is believed to antagonize these spirits to call them by their Salish names in public, so general terms like Siako, which just means spirit, night people, and stick Indians are much more commonly used by Northwest Native Americans. Okay. Stick Indians, Northwest Coast Bigfoot. In the traditions of many Salish and other Northwest Indian tribes, Stick Indians are malevolent and extremely dangerous forest spirits. Details about Stick Indians vary from tribe to tribe. They are described as large, hairy Bigfoot like creatures by the Salish and forest dwarves by the Cayuse and Yakama. So, hairy Bigfoot-like creatures and dwarves too. In some traditions, stick Indians have powers to paralyze, hypnotize, or cause insanity in hapless humans, while in others they merely lead people astray by making eerie sounds of whistling or laughter in the woods at night. In some stories, stick Indians may eat people who fall prey to them, kidnap children, or molest women. They also take aggressive revenge against people who injure or disrespect them, no matter how unintentionally. Okay, so they're vengeful like big cats. Not too many traditional legends regarding stick Indians have been recorded, in part due to taboos related to these deadly creatures. Stick Indians is an English euphemism saying the actual Salish names of these beings in public is considered to be provoking their attacks in some tribes, a belief many native people still adhere to today, choosing to refer to them only in English, if at all. Very interesting stories there, again, with paralyzing and hypnotizing. Okay. And I think the attempts of these people and the UFO beings to communicate with people in their minds or whatever create all these stories of abduction, experimentation. They're all images depicted in people's minds while they're paralyzed like this, and these beings are attempting to communicate with us. Our minds aren't sophisticated enough and don't have the right receptors to understand what they're trying to say. So our minds interpret it in the only way that it could be, thus leading to all of these um, abduction stories or whatnot. And people never left their beds. They're all paralyzed there, and these things are trying to communicate. They're in their heads messing around. And I think it's the adolescents who are primarily responsible for doing this out of the UFOs or Bigfoots too. Okay? Their parents tell them not to do these things. But you have adolescents, you were an adolescent, you know what an adolescent is, okay? Scientists have determined that most adolescent animals, including human beings, all behave in the same way. They're risk takers, they're boneheads, they're goofballs, all of them. Doesn't matter what species it is. They all behave in the same way, adolescents. They're a pain in the ass. Okay? So are the UFO adolescents and the Bigfoot out. They're all mischievous, just like ours are. No difference, people. Things could think, well, they got mischievous adolescents, okay? Just like all the animals. All their adolescents are mischievous. Woodman is a hairy Bigfoot-like wild man of the forest who moves silently and rarely reveals himself to humans. Frequently, he steals things or causes other minor mischief. In some stories, woodmen capture Athabascan children or pursue humans in an attempt to mate with them. In some tribes, such as the Atna, there is said to be only one woodsman, who is an immortal mythological character. In other tribes, woodsmen of both genders are said to exist. They may overlap with bush Indians in the folklore of some communities, but most Athabascans consider them different beings. Bush Indians are more aggressive, more human-like, and live in tribes where woodsmen are solitary, selfie, and do not kill people. Okay, so here's another one that was a good one. All right, so that's it, folks. I wanted to cover both of those things in these legends, these simple descriptions of them, one line or two line or whatever it is, because I felt we had to go over this. Okay, and who knows? And I say because of corn, okay, and the 80,000-year-old corn, and this being the single greatest feat of human genetic engineering, okay, the ability to genetically engineer by humans, the single most greatest, okay, we can't do it today, okay. Some other civilization living in the past that gave rise to half the creatures on the planet, plants and animals, are all genetically engineered creatures, including us, folks. Okay? The peoples of those times, I think, knew that the planet was going to get more catastrophes. It was going to change the gravity. It had ways of measuring just like we do. Okay, and it was becoming increasing and increasing, and they had to genetically produce all these things and try to carry their DNA into the future somehow. And they become very well versed at genetic engineering. And Bigfoot is just another thing that the giants genetically engineered. And they also toyed around with themselves as well. That's why all these different sized human beings and hominids and everything else. Okay? Who knows? We don't know. The point is who knows? Because of corn. We don't know what's been genetically altered or modified or created. We don't. This certainly was. No doubt, no if, and, or but about it. No caveman spent hundreds or thousands of years developing corn. There's no value in it. Can't produce food from grasses that you slowly coax into being a food plant or whatever. But, genetic engineering by way of what? They don't know. They still don't know. Okay? And you think this is the only thing? All right. And their explanations of it only go so far back in time. Who knows what was happening before that? All right, guys. So anyway, I wanted to bring you through all that stuff because I felt that, we had to talk about this and how it relates, how native folklore, at least in the Americas and North America here, relates to the giants and Bigfoot that seem to cross over in many cases in their behavior and the stories and whatever. With them being cannibals in some cases and not in others, it's obvious that the cannibalism story, as we heard over and over again, whether it's giants or Bigfoot or whatever, are just bogeyman stories told to children. There's no reality in it. It's like us saying that Nazis ate children or the Jews ate children, like in Bernard Malamud's The Fixer or something like that. It's all nonsense stories to demonize a people. It makes it easier to kill them when they're demonized, you see? Especially if you've been hearing it all your life since you were a kid. All right? So, anyways, guys, I hope you enjoyed the video. Please do hit the like button if you can, and I will be back with the final state, I believe, and we'll talk about some other things too before we completely leave that and go international, but we'll get to it. All right, so anyway, hit the like button, guys, if you like the video, and I'll be with you real soon with a new video. Bugcat7 signing out. Peace.